Europe today faces two great challenges. They're very obvious. The first is the crisis that it is going through today with respect to the euro. And I believe that when the people who actually created the euro 10 or 15 years ago set it in motion, they actually expected this crisis to occur. They knew that Germany and Greece could not live tightly coupled together unless there was fundamental change. And I think they saw this crisis coming and recognized that there were only two possibilities. You can't go back. You can either tear it apart or you can integrate more tightly. You need France and Germany, first of all, eventually Poland, Spain especially, to get much closer together. And I think that's what's happening. I think the crisis is forcing an integration in Europe that would not have been achievable without the crisis. I think the euro locked these nations together so tightly that they have no choice but to go forward together. If they do not, if the politicians fail, if Merkel fails, if Sarkozy fails, so on, then Europe will be torn apart. It will not just be the European currency, it's not just the euro, but eventually the entire European Union. This is an existential crisis for the great integration project of Europe. So I think they foresaw this coming because of the obvious differences between countries like Germany and Greece, and that this crisis was inevitable, and the only way out of it is to force a much tighter integration and therefore create really a genuine economic union. And I think that's the most likely outcome. The other great crisis that Europe faces is immigration. Europe's basic population from birth rate has slowed down. It needs immigrants, it needs workers, it needs consumers, it needs soldiers. And it's getting the immigrants, but it doesn't want them because they are neither white nor Christian. They're coming from India, from Asia, from Africa, and so on. So the great challenge that Europe faces there is integration with different cultures. And so there are these two great integration challenges, the economic and financial integration on the one hand, and the cultural integration challenge on the other. And it has to pass both of those for the EU to survive over the long run. It has to manage that financial crisis, and it has to learn how to live with a very diverse internal culture with many different religions, many different races, and so on. If it does that, that diversity will fuel growth, the integration will fuel growth, and it will be very successful. If it fails both of those, you will see a seething violence in the streets, and Europe will be chaotic. It will be an economic mess, and it will be a political mess. I don't think it will be war. Nobody wants to fight wars in Europe. But on the other hand, it will be economically and politically a failure. I actually believe the most likely scenario is success, not because of great leadership, but because of necessity. There's no other way to solve the problem but then, in fact, to go forward together. So I don't think, we're seeing great vision at work here. I think we're seeing necessity. The vision was 25 years ago in really forcing the European community to become the European Union, and 10 years ago to create the Eurozone. These two boxes that they put these nations in are going to force the integration, first of all, of finance, and then secondly, at a social level. So I think that's the really big challenge for Europe. Now look from a U.S. perspective, because I'm an American. Remember, we are really an extension of European civilization. We're part of the same culture, the same history. I'm an immigrant to the United States. I came from Hungary. There are many millions like me in Europe, in the United States, and many more coming from Asia, Latin America, and so on. We are part of the great engines of growth and peace and stability in the world, U.S. and Europe together. And it is up to us to act together to begin to learn how to live with countries like China, India, and Brazil that are coming along. So the big challenge is for U.S. and Europe to lead the next stage of global integration. Because if we fail in that, what we'll end up with there is the potential for real conflict between, say, the West and China, or the U.S. and China, and so on. As new countries rise and old ones are no longer quite as powerful. I think that's the big challenge. We in America and you in Europe have to work closely together to be able to manage that global integration challenge.